I've scaled 8 businesses to $1 million a month and have generated over $128 million in revenue in the process. But before that, I was a plumber from 9 to 5 and I was a closer from 5 to 9. 5 years later, I got to where I am today by mastering these 5 main fundamentals in sales. And in this video, I'm gonna share them all with you. You're not making as much money as you want because you're solely focused on improving your close rate. This is the first fundamental, and it's where so many people spend so much of their time getting it wrong. Your close rate, by nature, has a limit. It has a cap. You can only close 100% of the prospects you speak to at limit. That will not increase beyond that amount. So the effort you put towards increasing your close rate, while yes, it's warranted, it might not be the biggest lever that you need to pull to increase your income. I'll give you an example. If your close rate is 80%, but you only speak to 2 people a day, 3 people a day, then you're limited. Even if you increase your close rate from 80 to 100%, you're not going to make that much more money. The much bigger lever that you need to focus on in that example is speaking to more people, which is why when I was a closer and I was closing, and I got my close rate to a point where it was competitive and I outclosed most of the team. I beat the average consistently. I then switched my focus from being solely focused to close rate to being focused on volume. How could I speak to more people every single day? How could I fill up the hours that I had? At the time when I was part-time, I only had 5 to 6 hours a day. How could I fill up those 6 hours every single day with as many conversations about my product as humanly possible? When I made that shift and I stopped just focusing on close rate and I started really prioritizing volume, my income started to significantly increase. Because the fun thing is there's no ceiling. I could increase my volume exponentially, but I could only increase my close rate so much. So at that point, I went from taking 3 calls a day to 5 to 10 to 15 to 20. And that could continue growing. I could 10x that output and therefore 10x my commissions. So if you're watching this right now, the easiest thing you can do and the fastest way you can increase your volume is just call more people. Set yourself a daily KPI, a daily minimum to every day I'm going to pitch my offer or my product a minimum of 8 times. And no matter what in the day, do whatever is possible within your means to make that pitch at least 8 times. Just by setting that minimum KPI around activity, not around success metrics, you're going to find you will be speaking to way more people. So if you do all your calls on your calendar, you've only got 4 calls on your calendar that day, you know that even if all 4 of those show up, you're not gonna hit your KPI. So right out the gate, you're gonna start hitting outbound, you're gonna start working your pipeline, you're gonna start generating new leads and doing what you can. If you set this minimum non-negotiable, you would be surprised as to how creative you can get towards generating more volume. Because if you're watching this and you're like, well, I don't have more volume, I don't have more book calls. Well, you probably have leads, right? You probably have opt-ins. You probably can go pull a cold list of leads and call them. Maybe you can go into Facebook groups where your leads exist and you could work on them. Maybe you could go find other businesses that service your leads and create referral partnerships with them to get access to bookings. There's probably something that you could be doing that you are not doing right now to increase your volume. And if you make that the priority within your day-to-day, you would be surprised to how creative you can get into hitting those minimum volume requirements. To give you an example, we practice what we preach. Our closers, when they come on board into net revenue, they have a minimum of 200 dials per day that they have to hit as a closer for at least the first month to 90 days, depending on how quickly they perform and they get promoted to full-time closer. They have to hit those dials every single day or else they don't have a spot on the calendar. They don't have a spot on the team. And we train that volume into them from day one. Plus, think about who's going to be more valuable within the organization. The guy who closes 50% of calls booked, but he's limited to whatever marketing can book onto his calendar every single day, or the guy who closes 20% on calls booked, but he's able to generate way more booked calls outside of what marketing is able to give them. The reality is the number that matters most is the return on ad spend. It's the cash collected. It is not the closure on calls booked. If my closure on calls booked is lower than the next guy, but I bring in twice as much cash as he does every single month, I can assure you that I'm going to move up in that company much quicker than he will, and I will get access to better opportunity before he will. So if you're stressing about your close rate and your close rate is more than good enough, it's above average, and you're doing everything in your power to improve it and increase it, I would switch that frame and I would start thinking about how can you speak to more people versus close more of the ones you're already speaking to. Skill is the asset, systems are the multiplier. I went from being one of the worst closers in the company to being at the top of the leaderboard every single month consistently within my tenure as a closer at the company. This is the second pillar that we're going to talk about today. And the reality is if you take what I just went through about increasing your volume, the only way that that's sustainable at scale to talk to that many people every day and be able to actually do it every day and return the success metrics that you need is by having really dialed in systems. If you got to click your mouse 10 to 15 times to call every single lead, and you got to do everything manually, and you got to go find which leads to call and when and why and think between talking to people, you're losing so much time. Okay, I did another video on this already from one of my presentations at our event that we just did for net revenue. And one of the main things I talked about was when I was part-time closing, during the day, I was a plumber. I was working from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. as a plumber every single day. I didn't have nearly as much time as the next guy. And I was a professional fighter at the time. You probably see my gloves here. These are my first 2 gloves from my first 2 professional fights. I was training for probably about 2 to 5 hours a day, depending on the day of the week. So 2 to 3 times a day, I was in the gym, I was training. So I was severely handicapped by how much time I had compared to everybody else on my team. Plus, I didn't have the skill set that they have. I didn't have experience. I didn't have a ton of charisma. I was not outgoing. I had a big uphill battle to climb to bring in as much wins as the next guy. So the only way that became possible for me was to systematize my day so that I had to log in, I could talk to people the entire time I was logged on, and then I logged off. And so even though I only had 4 hours or 5 or 6 hours in a day to work, I was able to significantly increase my output compared to the next guy. And the next guy who was working for 10 hours a day or 11 hours a day was not talking to nearly as many people as I was. So how did I do that? I did that with a 2-pronged approach, my smart list and my workflows. Okay, even though I was a closer, I was not a manager, I was not a leader in the company, I still had my own smart list and my own workflows that were dedicated to my pipeline and my leads within the CRM. Okay, this might be different for you depending what CRM you're using, but the reality is it probably has smart lists and it probably has workflows. So I had a smart list for hot leads, warm leads, and cold leads. So again, my top priority in the day, no matter what, was the calls that were on my calendar, right? It was the bookings on my calendar and then my tasks, whatever task I had that day. If I had to follow up with somebody, if I had to, somebody was waiting on an offer or I had a second call, that was priority. If I had a new booking on the calendar, that was priority. But any white space, right? Anytime you don't have a call, you probably have 45-minute call schedules or 30-minute call schedules. You've got an hour, you've got 2 hours, sometimes 45 minutes. You got these awkward blank spaces in your calendar. That's when you go to your smart list. And so my smart lists were set up in a way where my hot list had an activity cadence where every day, and again, I did on the video from the event, I went through this in much more in depth. Every day, the hot lead would automatically populate on that smart list. So all I had to do was open my smart list and click dial, and then it would be calling. I had 45 minutes till my next appointment, so I was gonna be on that smart list dialing the whole time. I click ring, it starts ringing, they answer, we communicate, great. They don't, it goes to the next lead automatically. And then if you set up your smart list with activity filters, so last activity more than 24 hours, for example, when you call them and they don't answer, it'll remove them from the smart list and move them and put them back on the next day. And then if you set it up with created filters, so created within X time, now you can structure your hot list and your warm list to have different activity cadences, right? So all my new leads that came in that week, I wanted to call them every day. So my activity filter was every 24 hours if they were created within 7 days. For my warm leads, I wanted to call them every 3 days. So for every lead that was created from 7 days to 30 days, my activity filter was every 72 hours. Hopefully that's not too complex. Again, I did a whole video on this from when I did my presentation at our event. So you can go watch that. Maybe I'll link it here somewhere so you can click it. And the second thing outside of the smart list was my workflows. So I had personal workflows, personal templates, personal canned responses for every common lead or every common stage that I was dealing with. So for example, I used to do a lot of end of month incentives. Every single month, my entire pipeline from that month would get some sort of reactivation campaign. It would get some sort of incentive. Whether I was doing a free Q&A and I would get a bunch of people on a Q&A, maybe I was doing a discount, maybe I was doing a free coaching session, whatever it is. There's probably something in your product that you can pluck out and you could include it as a bonus, right? You could frame it as a bonus or just the general discounts, whatever it is. So I had all of these canned responses and all these workflows drafted. And then at the end of the month, I would choose one, I would turn it on, and I would add my smart list, my warm list, and my hot list into it. And it's very simple. It took 5 minutes. And then all of a sudden, I've got all of my leads from that month going into a drip of 4 to 5 day campaign for that last week to get them on a response. And then if one of them texted back, it would notify me. I've had a Slack notification set up where it would notify me on Slack as well, so that I can be on them as quickly as possible and get on a call with them. So if you do this properly and your goal is to increase your volume, like I talked about in the first principle, now you can increase your leverage and you can not just speak to more people, but you can do it more efficiently. Third framework I want to talk about is creating a sales script. There's a very large negative connotation associated with sales scripts these days. There's a lot of sales coaches out there that are selling you scriptless selling. The reality is they're trying to sell you their coaching. They're trying to sell you a program. So by them putting this sexy spin and calling it scriptless selling and selling without a script and learning the real skills of sale, it's a marketing tactic. I can assure you there is no multi-9-figure company that has a sales team that sells their widget, product, or service that does not have a sales script. There's a reason for that, is because it works. It creates consistency, it creates repeatability. And as a closer, you start from zero every single month, unless you've got like recurring and a base, whatever. But the reality is you probably start from zero every month. So if you can create some sustainability in your results, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you make a sales script that you can follow on call after call and you can improve upon it call after call? So this whole thing about scriptless selling is great. It's sexy. It sounds cool. But if you create a process that works and you write it down and you practice it and you improve upon it based on the data, you will be amazed how much easier being a salesperson becomes. And I don't just say this to say it. I say this from experience. I currently run over 150 person sales team. I have over 150 people. All of our top guys within our organization follow a process. They follow a script on every single call and they improve upon it themselves. They listen to their calls to get feedback so that they can consistently get those results month over month over month and improve upon it. In order to grow my sales team to the numbers we grew it to, I had to stop becoming the best sales trainer in the world. And I never was the best sales trainer in the world, but I had to stop trying to be. I had to start focusing on creating the best process that people can follow. And when I did that, when we made that shift within net revenue, it became a lot easier to scale sales teams, that to find great people, plug them into a great process, and then get great results on the other side. Okay, so a script allows the closer to get consistent results. It allows the owner or the founder to scale a consistent team, and it allows the founder to be able to scale and ramp up new closers within 2 weeks or less, because they don't have to learn all these incredibly challenging soft skills and frameworks and flowcharts and XYZ. They just get to learn the process that works and replicate it. And by the way, if you're a business owner and this content is helpful and you want more hands-on help from our team to help you scale your business, click the link below. I'll leave it in the bio. You can basically get access to our entire executive team and plug it into your business to get real hands-on support to implementing everything that we're talking about in these YouTube videos. You cannot overcome objections that are not real. This is the fourth pillar that we're going to cover on today's video, and I cannot stress enough how crucial this one is. So many sales reps and organizations spend so much time working on these really nice one-liners, these objection overcomes, these different handles for different situations and different problems. The reality is, you probably are spending way too much on your time handling objections that are not even close to the real problem or real objection that your prospect is giving you. 99% of objections that you get on your calls could have and should have been handled up front in the discovery phase of the call by asking better questions, by labeling the prospect better, and by creating an environment where those objections are never to come up in the first place. How many times have you gotten a prospect that on the call is telling you they can't do this now because of the money or XYZ, and then you say, well, sure, let's break it up into payment plans. Let's do $1,000 now and $1,000 in 3 months, or whatever desperate attempt you did to try to close the deal. And then all of a sudden, well, I also have to talk to my wife. I can't do this without my wife. And you go, no problem, let's get your wife on the call. And then you get the wife on the call. And it's like, well, we also want to think about it. We don't know if this can work for us. The reality is, if you're constantly handling these objections without finding the real one and without building it into your script to solving it sooner, more upstream in the call, you're just going to be chasing every single deal down at the end of the call. Your refund rate's going to be higher. Your buy-in is going to be much lower, and your close rate is obviously going to be much lower as a result. So my biggest recommendation to anyone listening to this, we're not going to get in the weeds on objection handling on this video. I'll probably do a video on how we at Net Revenue handle objections in the discovery phase. My biggest recommendation is listen back to all of your calls. What objection do you find yourself getting hit with the most and having to handle the most after you've price dropped, when you've gone for the close? And then ask yourself, if I know this objection is going to come, what can I do in the discovery phase to create an environment where that objection does not come up in the first place? Sometimes, let's say, for example, the objection you're consistently getting is the wife objection. Every single time the person on the call is saying, I need to talk to my wife, or I need to talk to my husband, and you're getting that consistently enough, put it into your script. And this is an example of what we actually did from one of our offers that was getting this. Put it into the script early in the call. Don't be obvious. Don't ask them, hey, do you need your wife to make this decision? They're obviously going to say no, right? Don't ask them a yes-oriented, obvious, on-the-nose question. But you could ask them something like, question, how does your wife feel about all this? I talk to a lot of people where they don't necessarily have the buy-in from their partner. Is that kind of the case here? And then you see it's a no-oriented question. No, my wife is actually really on board. I love that your wife's on board. You'd be surprised how many people we speak to where their wife is not on board, and they'll still join, they'll still get results and do XYZ, but it's much more of an uphill battle, as you can probably imagine. Yeah, I can probably imagine. Out of curiosity, have you guys always been that way? Have you guys always been really supportive of each other? Or is that something you guys built along the way? And now all of a sudden, this prospect of yours is explaining how supportive his wife is. And not just that, he's kind of teaching you about his relationship and how great his relationship is. I have a strong sense that he's way less likely to give you the wife objection if you've just done that for 3 minutes in the beginning of the call. You've asked him about his wife. He said his wife is on board because you framed the question in a way where it feels like him answering that his wife isn't on board is the wrong answer. And then all of a sudden you've asked him questions about how he even created that relationship in the first place. You can do that for every objection. If they always tell you need to think about it, ask them earlier on in the call, out of curiosity, what made you want to do this now? Why not, in 3 months or 6 months or XYZ? Oh, I wanted to do it now because of XYZ. Well, I love that. It sounds like you've realized that the only way for you to really hit these goals that you're talking about is by just jumping in both feet forward. Yes, you're right. I did realize that. And then all of a sudden you're labeling them as the kind of person that would never give you that objection in the first place. So I could do a whole other video on this, and I probably will, but hopefully that gives you guys enough of a context to build this into your script and build it into your sales process. Your gut is almost never right, but the data is. Now, this one might ruffle some feathers, but the reality is salespeople, and not just salespeople, business owners as well, suffer from this thing called recency bias. And salespeople especially, they have the worst case of recency bias out of probably anyone else I've ever worked with, and I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of salespeople. The reason is because you're taking these calls, you're getting these objections, you're getting these problems, you're getting these ICPs or avatars, and then you're going back to your team, you're going back to marketing, or you're going back to your script, and you're trying to change and break and adjust everything based off that last call. And even if it wasn't just that last call, you're going to trick yourself into thinking that it's happening more than it actually is. So this is where data has to override every single change you make to your process. Whether it's your pre-call process, whether it's your sales script, whether it's your workflows, your marketing, anything. If you're just a closer, then obviously you have less control over the other things. But if you're the business owner, all of those. The data has to tell the entire story. So for example, if you're having quality issues or you suspect that you're having lead quality issues, start tracking it, okay? Start getting a form in place, put a form before the booking calendar where leads are coming in, or wherever you capture leads, just put a form, ask them how much they have to invest or whatever your question is that dictates quality. Ask them that question, pull it into a spreadsheet and get the data for the last 90 days. For example, we usually like to do everything on 90-day spans, depending on how much volume we have. Get that data, see, is it actually the case? And then ask yourself, well, am I closing these ones? You might think, I'm not closing these broke leads. I'm not closing people who have less than $5,000. You'd be surprised. We did this on one of our accounts where the sales team kept telling us they had unqualified leads. They're like, we can't close these unqualified leads. We can't improve our close rate because all the leads are coming with under 5K to invest. I pulled a report in the last 90 days. The close rate on leads from 0 to 5,000 was 2 times higher than the leads who had 100,000 plus. So all of a sudden, the data is telling me that, hey, you guys are actually closing these leads pretty well. The ones that are above 100K are not closing. Maybe they don't have the need. Maybe they're overqualified. That's also a possibility. But the data is telling me that. So I'm not going to go and break things in my funnel and change my application and change my marketing when the data is not telling me that. It's just the reality is the sales team probably is having harder calls with the 0 to 5K. They're probably having more of them. And even though they're closing more, they're having more that they aren't closing. And so they're creating this recency bias where they believe that they're not closing as many of them. But the conversion rate, the data, says the opposite. So anytime you're thinking of making any adjustment to your script, to your sales process, to your workflows, to your marketing, go find what is the thing that's broken or that I feel is broken, and then look for data to support it. Okay. Now with AI, this has been easier than ever. All of our data goes into a database. It goes into our BigQuery SQL database. I'm not the software engineer behind it, but you get the idea. And then now with Claude, I'm able to just pull any report that I want from that database. Okay. I've got every lead, every application response, every touch point, every Zoom call, everything they say, it funnels into that database. And I can go in there and get the real data at any point from there. If you haven't started to build that already, I highly suggest you do. So, seek somebody out that has a background where they can do that. If you're just a sales rep, talk to your founder or sales manager and say, well, how can we build a better database on the back end to track all these data points so that my feedback can actually be backed up by real data? Now, those are 5 of the most important fundamental levers that you can pull in sales as a sales rep or within your sales organization as a leader. Now, if you're a business owner who wants to scale their business and needs help, especially on the sales operations side, on the recruiting, staffing, operations, and anything on the revenue side of your company, and you want our team to be able to plug into your business and help you scale, there's a link below in the caption that you can click and apply to work with our team. It'll allow you to book a call with our Director of Business Development, John. He's going to go through your exact business. He's going to bring you through an audit process that'll give you your path to scale. We'll show you exactly how we can help you execute on that path to scale. And if not, you can take that with you and execute it on your own and probably get a ton more value than most agencies ever give you, even when you pay them. And if you want to scale faster than 99% of the companies in 2026, you could also watch this video where I show you how real sales organizations are actually using AI within their business to increase productivity, not just feel like they're increasing productivity. Thanks for watching along. As always, like, subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next one.